Salutations and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to go ahead and try a little something different. One of the next chats that I plan to talk about will be intermittent fasting, but today I've been asked about some of the other types of things that I do involving art, and painting was one of the things that I had spoke about that I wanted to explore further. So this is going to be interesting because it'll be the first time exploring exactly how filming myself doing my artistic thing, quote unquote, is going to go. So first of all, medium is watercolor, and the subject matter is this cute little puppy dog right here. This is my latest commission. Cute. I love doing pets. Anyway, so to start off, I have Windsor watercolors. You can get this through Amazon. I'm obviously not really experienced in exactly what kind of watercolor is the best. I just research and look at reviews, and compared to so many other different types, this one is rated one of the highest at like 531 reviews the last time I had checked. So that's the one I personally went with. I also use India ink, FW Dollar Rodney acrylic artist ink. You can just look up India ink. It's not really that expensive. It works really well. I have one of these little circular palettes. What I do is, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of just water and a little bit of water right here as well. And then I have a little bit of India ink right here. And of course, I've got my page ready to be decorated and artified. So, first things first, I'm going to start off with a little bit of water, dipping it in my white paint. And the reason why I start off with the lightest color first, because if you make a mistake as you're starting to do a kind of outline, even though you're really not going to be able to see much of the white at this time, it's still going to give you an outlay of what your picture is going to be defined as. So even though you might not necessarily have a lot of white in your picture, you'll still always want to start off with white. Never, I repeat, never start off with your darker colors first, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you mess up or if you need to put a light color over it, I don't know about very many other paints, and honestly I'm still kind of a newbie when it comes to painting in general, because well, it's just a new endeavor for me. This will be painting number 21, so I'm still quite new at experimenting with this particular venue, but well, I guess you can see how it all turns out as we go. So I start off kind of giving myself a little outlay of what this pup is going to look like. I know you guys can't really see this very well, so I'm going to try to hurry through this particular color so that you guys can get a better idea. Although I do have to lay this as a foundation. So let me go ahead and finish this up, and when I get finished with the white, we'll start with the next color. Alright, so I've done an overlay. You guys probably cannot see what I've done here, but I will say it's a basic overlay of the entirety of the dog for the most part, because even though the entire dog isn't white, it has white hairs throughout it. So as I continue to blend through, I want to make sure that it doesn't look what's a good way to describe it? So it blends well, basically. I want to make sure that it creates a unified feel to it. So now that I've got the white down, looking at the colors that I have, the dog, as you can tell, is like peachish orange with overlays of pink. So we're going to go ahead and start with the colors that we have. So we got this kind of orangey texture here, but we don't want to get it too orangey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little piece of wax paper, take that. Well, that was enough excitement. Anyway. So, next. Little piece of wax paper here. And I'm going to take my paint. I'm going to take some of this yellow that's stuck to the roof here, and I'm going to apply it onto this wax paper. Now, you don't have to apply it to wax paper. You can apply it into some kind of plastic container, some kind of way so it's not going to just dry up on you, because the point is you want to be able to conserve paint so that you're not taking up a lot of product in order to create this. Now I'm going to use my water. I'm just going to kind of splash a bunch of this water on here. Now obviously this is way too orange for our dog that we have, so I'm continuously placing more water and more water because I still have quite a bit to cover for the base of the dog. So now that I've got the majority of that color out, now I'm going to want to go ahead and rinse off my brush, clean it off, and now we're going to take some water and I'm going to go ahead and get this yellow color here on the end. Don't worry if it mixes in a little bit, that's not a big deal. It won't change significantly your colors. But you can kind of see by just even looking at the overlay on top of that how that's going to change the colors. Now see, as we put that yellow in there, how it gets it closer. It's still not as light as we need it to be. So I'm going to clean off as much as I can, put some more water on my brush, and continue to pull more of this yellow. And I'm going to continue to do this until I get the right consistency. It's getting closer. Not quite there yet though. So keep experimenting until I find that awesome manila orangey blend that this particular puppy has. Okay, so that's a little closer. Still not quite what we need, so I'm going to add a little bit of water. I want to dilute this because if it's too orangey, I want to make sure that it's not going to destroy the picture. So now I'm going to look back at the dog, and I'm going to see the darkest parts are around his eyes and by his ears. So that's going to be the part where I'm going to start, just to be sure that no matter how dark it becomes, it's not going to end up ruining the picture. So I'm going to start off very light right up here by the ears. Yeah, I like that. I like that color. I'm going to just kind of give it, come down here to where all the darkest parts are in the dog's face. Just kind of keep, whenever you're looking at the dog itself, you want to keep the structure of the way that the hairs are going. So you notice you'll see the hairs going up like this towards his head. And you want to kind of keep that same momentum with the hairs going the way that they're supposed to go in the actual picture. You don't want to just lay down colors or lay it down in ways that it doesn't look like it's actually hair. And the best way to keep it from looking unlike hair is to make sure that the brush strokes go in the same direction as the actual dog. So I'm going to continue doing this, and then once I get this layer overlaid, then I'll get back to you. One thing I do want you to take note of is you see how it gets lighter. The more I use the brush, the lighter the color gets. So as it gets lighter, I'm going to continuously take parts where it's lighter on the dog and let that color bleed out. Let it kind of do the job for you. You don't necessarily have to keep changing colors. You can use the color you have, but let it kind of fade out so it becomes lighter. And then if you need it to, you can always just add a little bit of water to it. And that'll also make it lighter. But you can kind of see how it's changing the color of the dog as I continue to use the brush without reapplying any more color to it. So once I get done with this particular layer, I'll get back with you. Alright, as you guys can see, I've got the basic orange of the dog down. Now I want to go ahead and touch in onto the other types of details. You can see that the hair needs like some kind of gray to it, and we've got the pink of the tongue and the brown of the eyes. So I'm going to go with the pink of the tongue first, just because it's going to be one of the lightest colors. Again, trying to stick with keeping the lightest first, so that if I need to do a cover-up, it's going to be a lot easier. So let's see, I'm using my wax paper, and you can tell that there's a lot more orange left. The reason why I have a lot more here than I really needed was I didn't know whether or not it was going to absorb the color very well, or if I need to use touch-ups afterwards, it keeps it from drying out. So this is obviously going to be way too dark for what I need, but the tip of the tongue where the shadows are up on the top of the tongue is darker. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off at the top of the tongue where the nose is going to meet. So like right around here, and that's about the base. I'm going to go ahead from there and rinse off the brush a little bit, and I'm going to grab some white, and I'm going to make this more pink. More pink, more pink. So let's say Dulcific, la la la. Now I'm going to bring this to be a little bit more pink. And yes, it doesn't quite look like tongue yet. We're going to use black, fade it out into a gray to make that a little bit more tongue-like when we get to that. We'll shadow it in. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in little parts for the ear, since his little ears are pink too. Just a little bit there, and then I'm going to use water to take out most of the color. And then I'm going to just barely touch it, so that it doesn't take out all the white, because I want to be able to put white hairs in that after it dries. Let's see, I think there's a little tiny bit of pink, like right above his nose, just a tiny bit. I'm not gonna put in too much there, but once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next color. Now I want to define the eyes, because I need to be able to see the full picture for myself more than anything. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the brown. You see, I've got two different colors of brown here in his eyes. I've got the light brown and the dark brown. So of course, again, I'm going to start with the light. And I kind of like the way this looks, just the way it is. So I'm going to fill in where the eyes are going to be, leaving little specks of white there as a kind of guideline for myself to where it's going to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the darker. I think I'm going to use a smaller brush, a more detailed brush. So whereas my other brush, I was pretty much using a big fat tip to cover a lot of ground. But now I'm going to want to be able to get a little bit less sloppy. So now I'm going to go for the darker brown that I've got here. Just touch here, kind of see what this color looks like. Always test your colors. Don't just jump right straight in, because you'll regret it, trust me. I've regretted it. Okay, see, now this is a little bit too dark by itself, but using that light brown and that darker brown, I think I have found a color that I can deal with. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So Yeah, y'all. Now this is going to define the eyes by taking a little bit more. As you can see, it's still not quite where you want it to be, but it's going to get there. The more that I apply the darker colors to it, you always got to have the overlay first. And that's going to make a big difference when the picture's done. I keep having to add water to bring more color to it, but you got to be kind of careful when you're adding water. You do want to use it to the best of your ability to help blend out and whatnot, but you're also going to want to remember that the more you blend it out, the more it's going to kind of dissipate and change the consistency of your painting. So I'm going to continue preparing these eyes. I'll go ahead and continue while you guys are watching so you can get a good view of what the entire process of making the eyes are, because it's one of the most important parts to me personally. What I think when I'm doing a piece is that the eyes feel like they're what they're supposed to be. It makes the picture more realistic, to be able to feel like you're looking through the windows of the soul of the animal or person, you know, whatever being you're drawing. When you look in his eyes, that's the truth of the animal or the person. If eyes look flat, then they lose life. They lose pretty much everything that you're trying to convey as an artist. So that is what I'm gonna do. So that's the basics of the eye. I'm not trying to make this hugely long. I know it's a really long video as it is, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off, and I'm gonna work on a little bit more, and I'll be right back to you in a bit. Okay, now I'm starting to get into the details of kind of defining what we've already kind of laid out. So I'm using the brown that I had, and I'm kind of digging into the areas that have darker hairs. But I'm using water quite a bit. And you can kind of see that you can't really necessarily get a lot of definition coming out of this, but I'm going to build upon it. And it's going to be little bit by little bit. So as I continue to go through, it'll look more defined by bringing the hairs going up. And I'm sorry I have to keep cutting out of this. I'm trying not to make this video extremely long. It's already at 18 minutes. I hadn't realized just how long it would take you. See, I keep going back to the water. I keep continuously dipping and making sure that it's really, really watered down as I'm making the definitions for his hair. And I'm going to continue doing this throughout the whole picture. So I'll get back to you in a little bit. Alright, I figured I'd bring you guys through a little bit more of the shading technique. I've been sticking to the same brown. You can tell as I go through here, and I continuously dip in the water to kind of, and I'm always going to the darkest areas first and kind of moving through as I'm getting the hairs. I'm just kind of dabbing through so you can kind of see the definition. The more and more overlay that you put in, the more the dog is going to become defined. And it does take time. You can't be rushed by what you're doing. Just gotta kind of go with it and keep looking back at your reference picture and seeing how close you're getting to the actual goal that you're trying to get to. I'm going to go ahead and do some of the actual white. Now, I've got the India ink for that, which I've spilled all over my table because I'm awesome like that. So I'm going to put a little bit on my wax paper here, And I'm going to dilute the dickens out of it, okay? Because I really, 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 really don't want it to mess up. Now when I start, you can see I already did a little outlay for the nose. So I'm going to start with the darkest part of the nose, which will be the nostril. And do the other nostril so I can get a template of exactly how dark this this is going to overlay. Now I'm going to continuously use the water to bring it out so that I can get the lightest parts of the nose first. And I'm going to go into the lip, which I also overlaid with the brown to kind of, and see now that I just put more color, I'm going to do the same thing, the darkest parts of the nose, darkest parts, so I know exactly how dark this is before I move up. Of course this is going to be darker when it's all said and done, but I am not sure exactly how dark that's going to be. I know for a fact that this is going to be black, so I can test this out here, just kind of drag it up and get the feel of where the pup's mouth is. And as I'm running out of color, I can do the parts around the white because I know for a fact that that won't look bad there. And as it gets to almost be completely out of the brush, then I can give the tongue a little bit more base just to kind of feel it out. Now, India ink is not like watercolor, okay? It's not going to bleed in the same way. It's not going to disperse color in the same way. So you really have to be careful when you're applying it, that you're doing it with caution. Because nothing sucks more than putting way too much paint down and messing your picture up and just having to start all over again. I haven't had to do that yet, but I've come close. And I got very, very scared. So, just as a precaution, whenever you're using any color, just be sure that you take your time with it and that you just let it kind of fade out. And always start at your darkest areas so that if you do end up messing up or putting way too much color on, you can fix it. It can always be fixed one way or another. Alright, so I'm going to get back to you after I do a little bit more. Now the colors in the white of the fur are a very delicate process. I'm going to tell you, you're going to want to bleed out the majority of the color. So I'm continuously adding water here. And I'm going to keep going up to the places that I know are supposed to be black. And the reason I do so is because I don't want to get myself into a situation where if I put too much color down, it's going to ruin the piece, because we're talking about white fur. So that's not an easy task. But you see, by bleeding out most of the color here, now I can start formulating the color of the face and the definition of the fur by using just a little tiny bit of water to make the fur still appear to be white, but give it the shadow and the denseness of the fur that you're trying to get to. And I'm going to keep using it this way until all that color is gone. And then I'm going to continue the process by taking color, bleeding it out, taking it back over those same areas, places where I know I'm going to need a little bit of black in to define the color, and then just continuously bringing it out, taking it out, and defining that face. I'll come back to you in a few. Alright, now I'm basically about at the finishing touches, and I'm just kind of gliding over, finding spots where I feel like need highlights, like up here. And I'm just taking down the watered down version of the actual color, because it's a mix of white in this color, and I really, really want to keep the white base behind it without taking away the color as well. You can kind of see how that still makes it look like there's a white base underneath it. Now you see in here, there's still like a little splash of color. You don't really notice it as much, but if you put it in there, you'll kind of enrich the whole feel of the fur and the realistic side that there is that kind of shadow based in the fur that's already there. So, and I'm kind of blending it through, trying to make it feel